I welcome you all to today's Table Talk, Beyond Zero, A to Z of Fundraising with House of Habib, Outclass, and efino. My name is Zehra Hassan, and I lead programs and partnerships at Invest to Innovate. First of all, I want to congratulate Outclass and House of Habib for the $500,000 of investment Outclass raised in Q2. This has been an incredible addition to the increasing amount of deals coming into women-led businesses through WeRaise program. And it also speaks volumes to the potential of investing in women-led startups and women CEOs that we have been rallying through our Move the Needle campaign. For those of you who are here with us and can see us, we have a power-packed panel. We have Zehra Hassan, who is Family House Manager from House of Habib. Zehra has experience in banking, compliance, and law, and is currently developing the management of family office. We also have our favorite Maria Carolina, who is our expert coach, who's also partner at efino, an active angel investor, and has experience in leading fintech startups, fundraising, and supporting over 10 emerging countries in developing their entrepreneurial and investor ecosystems. And we finally have the star of the show, Aiman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Outclass. Outclass, for those of you who don't know, is an tech platform providing access to high quality education from the best teachers from anywhere across the world. So starting with Zehra, what inspired House of Habib to start investing in the ecosystem and, be active in the ecosystem?
Well, firstly, thanks for having us on this panel. And I think it's important to note that we're still really new in our investment journey. So we're also learning at the same time as making these investments. But basically, HOH really believes in the power of entrepreneurship to change a nation's fate. And we want to support this not just through our operating companies, but also through the startup ecosystem. So we are looking for startups that can make positive change in the country. And so as an extension of this mindset, we've been looking at the startup space to support entrepreneurship and innovation in the country with a focus on startups that have some sort of social impact. So ed techs and health techs really fall into this category. Besides that, it's also a way to diversify our portfolio and expand our horizons. So the amount of learning involved in this has been really valuable for us because it keeps us sort of engaged with the ideas that are coming up in the country, and it exposes us to new ways of thinking that will keep our perspective fresh going forward. And I think that is really valuable.
No, I think that's amazing. I think now is high time for us to, have funds like House of Habib to invest in, impact startups who are doing great for the country. And to, in addition to this question, I know that you guys are very early on. So what stood out to House of Habib when Outclass pitched their startup to you?
Well, the first thing that we noticed was that the founders are really passionate and focused, and they had a clarity in their vision that we really liked, and they knew exactly what kind of impact they wanted to make with their business. So that was one thing we took note of, as well as the fact that they were really focused on the quality of the content that they would be producing and not just on numbers and superficial growth. We were also really impressed by the way that they were really self-reflective when it comes to making changes to their business model. And I think that has ended up with something a lot more sustainable than what they had started out with, which it was really good to see that progress. And we also just noted that they have a lot of relevant work experience and they're really impressive individuals. So that definitely stood out to us, as well as the alignment there was between their vision and our vision at HOH.
I think that's an incredible way to put it. And I think for the startups that are attending today would also just, give them an insight into what stands out to House of Habib as investors, what they should be doing more as startups. Aiman, since you guys raised, I also wanted to know, how did the fundraising journey look like for you? So if you could walk us through a few steps of your fundraising journey and, how did the roadmap look like for you?
Thank you, Zehra, for having me and for putting me in the spotlight in your intro. That was quite unnerving, but thank you. And Zehra, thank you for the kind words and the stamp of validation and approval. It means a lot to us. Your question is very relevant for new startups. And I think Zehra in her answer actually mentioned that we pivoted quite a bit in our journey. So when we started, our roadmap looked very different. And then MC was coaching us throughout. And I think MC, you saw us take a few paradigm shifts throughout our journey. And then, the milestones kept changing. So the first thing was actually realizing the importance for and the timing for fundraising. So this was Q3 when we first started that, okay, you know what, maybe we should now start thinking about our future roadmap. And that's when we started mapping. And that was the time when, in all candidness and transparency, we were thinking like VC funding route. That was primarily also because it was the one thing that every startup was doing in 2021. And so by virtue of that, we also thought, you know what, like we should be doing the same thing. We have a promising EdTech is the future. There are unicorns in India, all of that. So that's the first step for our roadmap, realizing that we needed external capital for growth. The second was actually where MC and the team came in, and which was realizing that we needed coaching. And exactly because that's the step when you then realize, okay, you know what, we need to revamp our pitch. We need to make it more crisp. We need to connect with like-minded investors. We need to have a fair valuation. It shouldn't be too much. It shouldn't be too conservative, figuring all of that part out. And then the third really important pillar was then connecting with and really putting yourself out there in front of investors. I think that was the most tricky part and something that I would love to touch upon for other startups in this webinar. The part where you actually connect with like-minded investors, that was the hardest. And then, of course, once you find investors like House of Habib, we did our knight in shining armor for us was House of Habib. They actually paved the way for us for our future investments, because once they were through, the gravitas of their validation and the credibility and their trust actually made a lot of other angel investors very comfortable with us. So thank you guys for that faith that you had in us, and we hope we don't let you down. So that's the roadmap journey. And then finally, once you meet like-minded investors who have the same vision, who believe in you, and you want the same out of the whole equation, that's when you then close the round, and then you go for all the announcements, and then at the real action begins. So I hope I've covered the roadmap. But for us, it was like realizing we needed the external capital, and then all the way through coaching, and then pivoting a few times, realizing VC money wasn't for us. We needed angels and serious investment groups, and then closing it. I hope that I was able to answer your question. It was a little
You were.
long,
I think that
sorry.
was no. I think that was very comprehensive and just hit the nail right in. And I think you're echoing what Zehra is saying about the alignment of the vision with the investor as well. But a lot of what you just defined was things that you gained during working with your coaches and through the journey. But what was the support that you realized you needed for fundraising before joining WeRaise? And you spoke about how WeRaise expedited that fundraising journey by helping you figure out what kind of fundraising you needed. But what other support was there for you through the journey?
I think the one thing that we really needed support with was, how do we prepare an investment pitch from when we're presenting to actual investors? Because we had up till then been doing it for tech competitions, and no complaints there. Like, we won the two major competitions in Pakistan and in the world, so that was great and really good publicity. But then you're pitching to judges and a panel of people who are assessing you for your model and for the way you pitch, but not really from the eyes of an investor. So that angle we really needed help with because it was our first time in, and someone as seasoned as MC, we really needed that support and that lens that, you know what, no, these are the questions that you expect, these questions, be prepared for them. That was the kind of coaching and hand-holding that we very early on realized we just didn't know. Also because none of us had entrepreneurial experience. We had all had corporate and educational experiences, but this was our first. So that was that. Zehra, what was the other part of your question?
I think that how did, WeRaise facilitate you through that journey as well?
Yeah. So yes. So, and then of course with that, we had a lot of versions of our pitch, and I think we drove MC a little mad in the process. But we tried to be good students. So with each version and each new recommendation, we would try to really adapt and change. We weren't married to any one idea. And so when this happened, sorry, there's some interruption in my lesson as usual. Anyway, so when that happened, with each practice run, we would, revise our pitch. And that's where the coaching really helped, because otherwise, the day we started and then the day the last day, our pitch was different, our idea was different, our expectations were different, the valuation was different, and our business model was different by the end of that coaching session. So we really changed.
Thank you for answering, Aiman. And I think, MC, for me, I come to you right after this question. Aiman shared her perspective on how she was facilitated. But how do you think, as a coach, you facilitated Aiman in this journey, like from A to Z of it?
So I think for me, there were two things. Number one is to encourage the team. So Aiman has a great co-founders, which is very important to say here. And to have a very contrarian mindset. So they were great students, yes, but at the same time, it was all the time we were operating in the scenario of what if this doesn't work? What would be like, and that actually having that contrarian mindset and that flexibility in the mind, I think is what allowed them to actually pivot, as we pivot many times, but ended up in this, let's say, very nice situation where, yes, you can get funded, but it's about which type of investors you want to welcome you and will walk you the journey until the moment, let's say, how happily we will have an exit, all of us. So that's precisely what we wanted. And the second thing is that even though, of course, with Mevish, we were suggesting them things, they were always in the driving seat. I recall the first time that we met, and then they did the beautiful pitch, and these are the investors that we want to target. And our 2 cents were like, we don't think that's the right match, but with your kids, you do your job, we will be cheering you up and try to support you. But whenever you think it's not working, that's precisely when we are here to pivot together. And I think that one. So just to recap, encouraging that contrarian mindset with all the time understanding each one of us that they were in the driving seat, and at the very end is their own venture.
Thank you for answering that. And also, MC, what was the aha moment for you to Outclass's journey?
So I think that our aha moment was when they navigate and they try there, because I love that, they are, and as an entrepreneur, you need to be stubborn whenever you are convinced. So yeah, well, we are going to walk the path and go for all of these, and actually getting out and always with that energy of pitching and take as serious as possible every single investor and their professionalism. I think the aha moment for me, if I could invest in them, unfortunately I can't, but it's more how the resilience that they had, and then all the time learning and trying. So literally their pitch completely was a different one. And the last slides when I'm seeing it, like even for their own company, understanding their KPIs, what is going to be the next model, what is going to be the next journey, for me was when I said these are true entrepreneurs, because life is like that. Today we are here, afterwards we will have, as we just leave, all of us, a change in pandemic or economics or everything. And these are the true entrepreneurs that could pivot the business model, and then they have that resilience. And also in this journey, it's not easy. I think for Aiman and for the team, it's a roller coaster. Some days you have your highs, sometimes you have your lows. But exactly, how do you have that inner strength that allows you to continue with the very, very best quality? I think that for me, that was the aha moment when I saw the team. Let's say it wasn't an easy journey, but the way that they navigated it was a professional one. Yeah.
Can I add something to that, MC? Because you were such an integral part of it. I think we both had our aha moments together. I think I even remember that session because the way it would go is initially we would, of course, you were pitching, and we were very lucky in the sense we got through to all the bigger VC investors. So it wasn't a matter of, okay, how do we get in touch with them? We managed that. The issue was it wouldn't carry through, and everything seemed to be in place. So I remember we had this session where MC was like, this is something is missing. Like there seems to be some puzzle that's missing. What are we not doing right? And we thought it through, and then that was that aha moment that I wonder if it's the sector that you're in and not, not the company or the business model. And then that was that, because what was going, context is very important. What was happening was all of these fintechs and agri-techs and all these quick commerce, that was all, that was a hot sector part in Pakistan at that time. So when investors would listen to our pitch, we wouldn't be as exciting or as, a sexy a sector as fintech or quick commerce. So we then very quickly realized that, okay, you know what, maybe this isn't that round then where we go for maybe a $2 million raise. Maybe we should just do a bridge round and build first, and that's maybe what the investors need. And so we that aha moment for me, and I think for MC as well, was when we realized that we needed actually a shift in our expectations and in our funding strategy, because it wasn't that we weren't right as a business, it was that there was a mismatch between what the investor appetite was and what we were offering. And so that really buoyed our spirits as well. I remember telling MC that, boy, you know what, like, we're exhausted. It's been quite a run, and we've been through a lot of no's and a lot of very traditional lines like, you know what, we love you guys, but maybe in another 2 years. And we just kept listening to those from all investors. So it was a downish period morale-wise, but this was that aha moment for us. And I speak for my co-founders as well. MC, thank you for mentioning them as well. But yeah, from there onwards, we changed everything, and it worked out.
Thank you for sharing that. But also, Aiman, like, I know that you mentioned that this is an exciting journey for a founder to be fundraising, but it also can get tiring and exhausting, right? And I think a lot of the times we don't speak about those aspects of it. But I also would like to know, what were some key challenges you faced during this time that you didn't see or you didn't foresee beforehand?
I think the biggest challenge was that it really, we didn't expect for it to take so long. Even though MC really tried to tell us that, guys, brace yourselves, this is going to be a long ride. But we were like, no, it's okay. It won't be that long. It won't be 8 months. But it was, and it was very tiring. So it exhausts you physically. That was the first challenge, because you have to really, really develop a thick skin and not really make it about yourself, and be very okay with that, you're doing the right thing. It's just a mismatch of expectations and what they want versus what you have to offer. It's not personal. That was the first one. And I think I think the biggest two challenges were for us the part that it took a lot of time, and I am the CEO as well. So for me, I had to run operations, and then I used to personally be the one pitching, because for me, it was important that if I am the CEO and the captain of the ship, I should be the one pitching. So I would be the one with doing 80% of the heavy lifting. And I can speak this in front of my other two co-founders. They wouldn't contest that. And then, like the next day, waking up again early morning and starting back. So it was just a very, very tiring roller coaster of a ride. That was the first. And the second was that it took a lot of time. And then the failure, the consistent no's would get to you at times. But consistency is key. I think if you like, I think there's a mix of consistency versus ability to change and adapt. So while you don't have to second guess yourself after every no, I think it's also there's this right balance where you do have to keep asking yourself, okay, how could we have done better, or what can we change to actually appease our audiences? And so there's that mix that you don't become too enveloped in self-doubt and don't become too married to your original idea either. Just give a little and then don't give a little. You know what I mean? Like, that was the balance that we went for. And I think that's the trick to it.
Thank you, Aiman, for sharing that. And I think, Zehra, just bringing this to you as well, I think we're hearing just in this conversation a lot of traits of founders, like, who are strong. So tenacity, flexibility, adaptability, also like, consistency. So as an investor, what is it that you watch out for while making a deal? And what is it that you recommend that startups can do better to increase their chances of raising investment?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think the first thing that we were looking for was alignment in our vision and our purpose. So if the founders also have clarity in what their vision is and the impact that they want to make, then that is a huge green flag for us. And then we also need to see whether that vision is something that aligns with our values as investors and also our investment strategy. So with Outclass, for example, their focus on education was really well aligned with House of Habib and a lot of our philanthropic initiatives. So I think it was clear that it was a good match. And on that note, to increase the chances of raising investment, I think Aiman also spoke about this, is that you really need to be approaching the right investors. So you need to sort of understand what the investors are looking for in terms of projects that they are interested in and their values. So the more research you can do on the investors before you pitch, the better success you will have, I think, and just making sure that they're the right ones. We also wanted to see a strong understanding of the marketplace in which they're operating, as well as a business model that is more long-term focused and not just focused on growth in the short term. And then there's a few things like transparency with regard to the information that they're giving us, staying in touch about key metrics and monitoring them, and the clarity of the deal room documents. All of this stuff really helped give us a sense of comfort in investing in them. And yeah, I think the main thing is really just alignment of your vision.
Thank you for answering that. And also, Zehra, for us, and this is, one of the reasons we're doing this webinar. And I think we already have a power pack panel of 3 very strong entrepreneurs, investors. We really think now is the time to increase the number of deals in women-led companies, right? Like globally, it's just 3%. We've been rallying for it through our WeRaise program, through our Move the Needle campaign, and we're actually seeing that increase. So what is House of Habib's thesis when it comes to supporting women-led businesses?
Well, it's clear up until now, at least, that the VC and investor space has been male dominated, and funds tend to invest in people that are similar or familiar to them. So there's a lot of structural bias in funding decisions, which we are hoping to mitigate, I guess. And I mean, this results in the overlooking of women's perspectives and products designed for women, and those make up half the population, right? So it's a huge opportunity loss if you don't pay attention to that. Not only that, but women think about problems differently and they find different solutions. And they also think about different issues, like they face different obstacles in their lives. So their focus is often very different from male founders. And it makes sense to diversify your portfolio to include those different perspectives. As well, I mean, women in general in Pakistan, but also in the startup space, face a lot more obstacles than men. So providing opportunities for women's ideas and companies that might otherwise get overlooked has a huge impact just on women's empowerment and society as a whole, which is really important to us. And I mean, women are better calculated risk takers, as many articles have proved. So I mean, I think women have invaluable perspective that we really want to support at HOH, and they also make up half the population. So it just makes sense that they should be represented in this space the same way they should be represented in every space.
No, I think you definitely deserve a shout out for that. I think you've seen very inclusive investments with the gender lens coming from HOH. So like that's incredible and we really admire that. And just my last question, and I think after that we're going to take questions from anyone in the audience. So you can raise your hand and then we'll take the question. But Zehra, like, just to wrap this up, I would also know, like, there are founders here who would be looking for investment and who are, on their fundraising journey. So what kind of startups and founders are you watching out for while making an investment right now?
Okay. Well, at HOH, our investment strategy is focused on social impact and innovation. So we're really looking for startups that provide some sort of social benefit, which is in line with our values as well. So, I mean, as I've mentioned with Outclass, that's clear because HOH has a strong philanthropic focus on education. And we already support a lot of educational institutions through our businesses like Habib University and Habib Public Schools. So Outclass seemed like a natural fit because their goal of increasing the quality of education that's available to Pakistani students tackles the problem that we're also trying to tackle, but in a different way. So it's just two different ways of working towards the same goal, and therefore increasing our odds of success or at least progress towards that goal. And I mean, as a family office, we do have a rather conservative outlook towards our investments. So the sustainability of the business model is really important to us because we are quite risk averse. So the more sustainable that is and the more long-term the view is, the more comfortable we will be with making investments.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'll just wait for a minute to see if somebody has any question. You can raise your hand. You can also share it in the chat. And while we do that, meanwhile, like, in case you think that there's any piece of advice we missed through this or any, like, key learning that any of you want to share with the audience, especially a lot of them are women-led startups, feel free to chime in. Especially like, Maria, if you think, considering your 2 years almost working in the Pakistani entrepreneurial space, is there something that, you have observed that you think would act as a key learning for startups?
I think with many, and it's not only for Pakistan, but it's globally, is a little bit of the expectations whenever you are getting into a fundraising. It's very important because all the time I have heard like, exactly, I want the big VCs, I'm gonna do this, like Aiman said at the very beginning, it's gonna be fast. And it is not. So I'm not saying to be on the pessimistic side, not at all. And you need to be the most optimistic, but it's more that alignment of expectation in terms of three main things. Be open to whatever, like what are those investors? And going back to what Zehra was saying, for them is very important that the mission and vision matches with them. Is the same for you founders. You need to find investors that actually that match, that those values perspective does matter because you're building a long-term relationship. So I think that for me was number one. Second, it is true that all of us, we want our companies to have super higher valuations, but I have been in your shoes. And trust me, if you get overvaluated in the first financing round, you will have a double pressure because you like pressure on your shoulders because you have to maintain that valuation. So sometimes it's better to do a conservative valuation or a fair valuation that will allow you to drive your business and not to like completely be suffocated that I really need to reach the other valuation stage in order to go for the next financing round. And the third one, I think that is exactly what Outclass did, and it's like that flexibility to be great listeners, and you guys are in the driving seat. At the same time, by being great listeners, you will understand that pivoting is completely normal in life, and especially for founders, that you become masters in that way in all ways and sons. So that would be like my three things. Yeah.
I think those are great learnings, especially the last two, because One, like valuation is super important. We've been seeing that in our space, that, that's something we really want to emphasize on. And then for a country like Pakistan, being flexible for pivoting, I think that's really important. We also have a question, and I think, Aiman, I'm going to ask you this since I think it's most relevant to you. So Ruby is asking, what stage do we need to be at to know that we need support in terms of preparing a pitch for investors? How do you know you're investment ready?
Oh, great question. I think context would be very, very relevant when answering this question, because there are a lot of ways when I can answer this. But so 2021 was a very different year in terms of raising funds than 2022. And this one's significantly harder. And I think it's going to stay hard for the next, 15 to 18 months, but that's my prediction. So it's very important that this is not that the ideal time period to be raising. But that being said, I think the one way to, how do I put it, be prepared for is to first, so I think investors are now looking for more promise and less risk. And they don't have that kind of risk appetite as they used to in the last year. That's what I have figured out from my own interactions with investors. So a good way to handle this would be to first assess what your route to profitability and to generating revenue would be. I don't think this is the right time to be expecting a lot of investment support for pre-seed or idea stage startups. It's just that I'm not being pessimistic. It's just that the market, and MC, maybe you want to bring in some perspective, and maybe I'm speaking for, because you meet a lot of investors. So I think first you have to assess what stage you're at in terms of generating revenues and profitability. And like Zehra mentioned, to be able to vouch for long-term sustainability, like the business model has to make sense. The idea, so I don't think this is the market right now for ideas which will, eventually we'll start making revenue and eventually we'll start monetizing, and eventually, I don't think that if that's your product, I think you're going to have a hard time raising in the next 15 months. If you have a product which has crossed the MVP stage, or service which has crossed the MVP stage, and you're fairly confident and you have some numbers to prove, like some proof points that would assure investors that, okay, this might pick up and it has scale. Again, like Zehra also mentioned, that it has to make sense in terms of the robustness of the business model. That's when you then decide, okay, how much runway do I have? Do we founders have any capital at all, or do we need some to now invest in the business to make it grow? So a lot of parameters would come into play. MC, you want to support me a little, because I think this is a really important question, but context is important. So I'm being a little careful with my answer.
No, I agree. And also, and this is what we are seeing globally also, and I have seen every year, there are, as we call it in our jargon, there are flavors of the year. Flavors of the year, meaning there are sectors where investors have bigger appetite than other. Just to give you an example, like now it continues to be, let's say, the trend, logistics, e-commerce, and fintech. So, and it's not that, because and this is precisely what we live with Outclass. So EdTech, the years before, was a very hot, let's say, sector, and everyone wanted to go. And then suddenly, supposedly everyone identified the good ones, and then there are great EdTechs coming in, which are having very hard time. But again, the beauty about this journey is that not all of us, we need to be the same. Like you can come, as she mentioned, with a, let's say, with a business model that is sound, that makes sense. Ideally, you have some testing, some revenue that you can prove that the market is ready for you, and so on. And then it's more exactly about the mapping the investors. What is the right match according to your sector and the stage of financing of your company? So I think also those two play a lot. And I am seeing it. I just came from Latam, and the flavors are kind of the same. So I see many, like, for example, in medtech, amazing things happening, but a little bit disencouraged the founders because it is too tough to find funding. And it is true. However, I always think that there might be a mix of sources of funding available for each startup is just to find exactly that right match. Again, not easy. It's a difficult journey, but not impossible at the same time.
Thank you, MC and Aiman. So Zehra, we have another question. I think you briefly touched upon this earlier as well, but we have someone asking, do VC firms or investors in general have a certain criteria? I mean, you basically mentioned the very overarching criteria, but specific criteria like, degree from a fancy international university or experience in startups like Xcareem, etc.
I wouldn't say we have criteria as specific as that, but it definitely helps if people have credentials that we can recognize and trust in. But at the same time, I think when meeting with startups, the most important thing is their idea and how committed they are and how confident we are in their ability to carry that out. So even if they don't have fancy degrees from abroad, but they do have a really good idea and a really good idea about how they're going to reach that goal, then that's what is most important.
Thank you. And I think we have two questions, one from CTO at Agritech and another from Khair, but I'm going to just club them together. And I think, Zehra, I'm going to ask you those questions. So basically the question is, from an investor point of view in the current, downturn, how has your approach to funding changed? Taking into the account current financial market, global recession, are you still willing to invest in startups from early stage or like who are pre-revenue, or are you looking at only post-revenue models right now?
I think we're still looking at pre-revenue models, but we've always been conservative in our outlook, so that hasn't made a huge impact on that. But I think it is probably going to impact the amount of funds that are available for second round investments more than anything else. So yes, on the one hand, it is a difficult time to invest in Pakistan, but it also is a good opportunity to keep diversifying our portfolio because our operating companies are also, suffering from the Pakistani economy, and diversification of our income streams is the solution to that. So I think there's pros and cons.
Yeah, I think there definitely is. Thank you. Maria, so we have someone asking, many founders go through a struggle of finding a perfect mentor. And I know generally women struggle to find a perfect mentor as well, but for founders as well, right? So how can someone find the right mentor who is aligned with their vision?
That's a tough one. I can go in. But no, what I would say is, and I think everything in life is like that. It's not only about how to get the right mentor, but asking oneself, am I ready to be a mentee? Am I open enough? Am I ready to be challenged? Because yeah, what we just described with Aiman is not that all the time we were just laughing in these sessions. There were tough moments of the sessions where we were providing strong feedback, or all of us trying to understand what was going on and so on. But it was precisely that willingness and that openness and transparency. There were so questions that unfortunately I cannot disclose the precise questions, but that they were super do I disclose this information? Do I and these when the founder is that ready and that open to go into that journey, and the willingness and commitment of time, because there are many things, the time commitment is high, the openness that you need to have, the transparency in everything, I think that then you will enhance the chances to find a right mentor that will enable you to actually walk successfully that journey. So I think it's in both ways. And then, of course, what I will always do when I was a founder, like all of you, I also did the same, and is what I call the reverse due diligence, meaning all the time that you are as a founder, everyone wants to do due diligence on you. Even to be part of I2I, you get due diligence on you in order to, Zehra, when she was analyzing her investments, she was performing due diligence in all of them. So the same I will do in your personal case. So do due diligence in every investor that you want to welcome, and at the same time in every mentor that you are envisioning that might help you and it's completely fine. We have this very nice thing in the European Union Commission, and that the founders normally, they see this is the profile that we would like. And actually there's a suggestion of 3 of us, and then we go into interviews just to get that first understanding, or because one thing is not only about the individual, but it's also about the chemistry that you can have with that individual, because you're going to work hand in hand and you need to feel comfortable. So yes, that would be my second thing. It's allow yourself to ask questions and do some due diligence of whoever you think might help you. And I think in that way you might find maybe not the perfect match, but someone that definitely can add value to your journey.
Thank you, MC, for answering that. And I think just a shameless plug here as well, that we at the WeRaise program also try to ensure that, we can facilitate the mentor-mentee matchmaking process for you. So just ensuring, like, when we do your gap analysis as a startup, we try to find, what would be or who would be the right kind of mentor for you to address that kind of problem. So if you are someone who needs support in mentorship or coaching, please apply to the program. You might just find the right mentor. You might, just like Aiman found MC and Mehwish. So there's that as well. Aiman, the next question is for you. So I think Zehra said this, you said this, like there is a lot of alignment on the vision of sustainability, especially in the current global downturn. So how is Outclass planning their business strategy for dealing with the economic downturn so they can cruise through it?
Great question. I think the very first thing that we decided was that just because we now have funding, that really doesn't mean that we start blowing money off. So we're being very, very careful and responsible with the way we're growing. It's still a very much lean mindset, and we're actually very, very laser focused on creating products that have monetizability or monetization ability. We're still not going down the route where we, create products for free and get users and show us a success story. We really want to build something that has inherent monetization value. The reason being, this is, and I keep saying that we take this journey as a marathon. It's definitely not a sprint. And even though we're running like we're in a sprint and we're exhausting ourselves and, we're running on fumes, some days we feel, but it's really a marathon. And so the first thing is like very, very deliberate and careful spending. The second is we're still very coachable, and we have our eyes and ears open. We're still always on the lookout for any help that we can get from people who have done this before us or who haven't succeeded, mistakes that people have made, things that have worked. But and this is kind of linked to the previous question that you asked, and MC really answered really well, about finding the right coach. I think you as a founder have to do that effort. You have to really put yourself out there and look for those people who would advise you. So that's the second one, that we're still constantly looking at ways to improve our operations, to learn a thing or two, to just really better ourselves. And then the third is we have very set 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 1.5 year milestones that we're running after. We're not promising the moon, and we've made that very clear to our investors. And the reason that our investors are with us, and I think I'm hoping it'll be a very fruitful relationship, is because the expectations are aligned. So we're not over promising at all. But we are deliberately sticking to our roadmap, our plan. We're actually trying to do more than we promised, but we're not saying that we're going to be a 20x company in 6 months. That's just not what we're doing. So I hope I've answered your question. That's the overall strategy. Stay lean, stay coachable, and stay realistic.
No, I think that perfectly answers the question. Thank you, Aiman. And Zehra, my last question to you, and then we can wrap this up. So we talked a lot about positives, what HOH is looking for, but what are the red flags for, an investor? For example, investors are interested in knowing the shares of co-founders of the startup, would they get discouraged if it's off balance?
I don't think they would be discouraged about that necessarily, but I think some of the red flags are if they have an unrealistic view of the market that they're operating in or what they can achieve, then it's easy to poke holes in that, and people like your investors are going to ask questions. So I think it's best to like be really aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, and also give a realistic view of what's possible, as Aiman mentioned already. I think also one thing that's a red flag is if you put the investors under pressure to make a decision quickly, because they are going to want to do a lot of due diligence. And if you're not cooperative in that process, that will be a red flag to them as well. And I think another one will just be sort of a lack of experience and understanding of the market, because like as investors, we are depending on the founders and the CEO to know what they're talking about. And that's a huge thing.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for joining the panel on a Friday evening, Aiman, Zehra, Maria. Really thankful for your time. A lot of gratitude for, sharing the insights that you shared. I think they were very crisp, very concise, and I think very hard hitting in terms of what are the traits that founders need in terms of becoming investment ready, and also like how does the journey look like and what are the things that they should look out for, but also knowing what is HOH's thesis and what are the kind of startups they're looking into right now. So really appreciate your time, really appreciate your insights. If anybody has any last parting words that you want to share before we sign off, would love to hear.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. I'm personally on behalf of Usman and Ali as well. We'd love to always be connected to this forum. Thank you, Zehra. Thank you, House of Habib, and thank you, MC, as always. And you look great. I don't know what you do with yourself, but you look great. And it's great to see you. And thank you, Sidra. You've been an amazing host.
Thank you. Zehra, do you have any last words?
No, just thank you, Sidra. It's also been really good to be a part of this. And I really appreciate, the opportunities that WeRaise has given House of Habib to like look at founders, because they're all really impressive. So I think the strength of the program sort of speaks for itself, and I just want to appreciate that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. MC, do you want to say something as well?
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone. I love that not all investors are that open, Sarah, as the investment thesis and so on. You will have your email full of emails, trust me, tomorrow when you open your inbox. Anyway, it has been seriously a pleasure to coach Outclass. Like seriously, as I have mentioned to them, it's about the team. At the very end, we invest in people, and they are global, seriously entrepreneurs, humble, down to earth, very smart. So I just hope that while you continue this journey, you keep, let's say, that down to earth as has been like what you guys have always managed, that, let's say, inner strength and very humble. I think that's one of your more valuable things in life. Yeah, and thank you to the WeRaise program so that we can have the opportunity to all meet.
Great, thank you, everyone. For those of you who joined or are watching us, on the recorded session or Facebook, you can sign up for the WeRaise program on www.weraise.pk. It sounds like I'm a radio jolly at this point, but really appreciate your time, everyone. Have a great weekend. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.